Hi everyone, and welcome to ITC Asia's Unfiltered Conversation series, where we dive into the ideas and innovations shaping the future of insurance. I'm Trisha, Director of ITC Asia, and today we're talking about one of the most exciting technologies in the industry right now, generative AI. Joining me is Sonny Patel, Chief Product and Technology Officer at Socotra. Sunny, thanks for being here. Excited to dive in with you. But before that, could you share a quick background about Socotra for our listeners?
Great. Trisha, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's my pleasure. Um, and to the audience, so I am the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Socotra. Socotra is a modern policy administration system introduced in 2014, and we built our platform on the principles of modern software development principles, which is being cloud native, being API first, and with the goal of providing insurers a much easier and a lower cost way of building and maintaining insurance products.
Thank you. So let's start from the top. There's been a lot of hype around GenAI, but what's striking is how quickly it's moving from hype to real world applications in insurance. So, Sunny, how do you see generative AI fundamentally shifting the landscape for insurers over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think the possibilities are just so exciting when we think about it. And I can definitely speak from Socotra perspective and then also add on overall, what the industry could be doing. So at Socotra, we always, our first and foremost, our customer are the insurance carriers. And like I said, our primary focus is on making sure that we are enabling them to, one, offer much better and much more differentiated products to their own consumers. So how do we help them do that? And this is where Gen AI plays a role because I think we now have this amazing technology that is helping us not only be more effective than we were ever before, but also in order to do certain things that were humanly not possible, right? So if I look at that and break it down in terms of how policy admin systems such as Socotra could be leveraging, I could broadly be thinking about five main categories. Uh, so one is about implementing the products itself, right? And what that usually entails is, migrating data from an existing platform, could be legacy or could be another modern policy admin system. It could be handling the deployment of the product. So there's these steps, these common steps that take part as part of implementation, where Gen AI could be utilized again to make those processes much more efficient. So taking the example of data migration, taking a source schema and mapping it to what a target schema should look like. Gen AI is very effective in coming up with a good starting point, so the whole process doesn't have to be manual from start to finish. Again, another area where that policy admin systems where we can leverage Gen AI is in terms of building the products itself. This is something that we are very much experimenting at Socotra with, which is using natural language, describe what the product should be doing, and Gen AI takes this natural language input and provides a product configuration that follows the schema that is supported by Socotra platform. Now, when we look at a use case like that, that just seems like magic, right? Something that was not possible, something that was very manual. And I think this is where technology is helping us, get products to the market much more faster. Another couple of areas are, within underwriting, several scenarios where Gen AI could be helpful. Like for example, AI-powered risk scoring to help underwriters make underwriting decisions for specific policies, specific business accounts. Servicing scenarios where customer service agents could be providing much better and much more personalized responses to the consumers reaching out to them with any kinds of needs related to their policy, either new or existing. And lastly, I feel this is probably the biggest advantage AI in general provides, and particularly Gen AI, is providing better transparency and insights into the data that we have. Again, something that's very important for carriers. They operate on vast amounts of data. So Gen AI could definitely be leveraged to look into these vast volumes of data and derive some useful, actionable insights from that.
Okay, I think you mentioned a little bit about what we're going to be deep diving into in the next question as well. I think what really excites me about GenAI is that it's not just about improving efficiency, it's about changing how insurers interact with customers, how they design products, and how fast they can launch something new. So, what are some of the most compelling GenAI use cases you've seen take shape in Socotra or with your clients? So, I think you mentioned underwriting, right? So whether in underwriting, claims, customer engagement, or product design.
Yeah, by the way, Trisha, do you want me to pick? There's so much to speak about each of these areas. Should I pick one and then we can probably dive into
Yeah,
that a little bit
absolutely. Yeah,
deeper?
yeah, go ahead.
All right, so let's take customer engagement because this applies to insurance and but in general, I think customer service applies to many different industries, right? And it's as quite frequently, all of us are consumers of different insurance products ourselves. So this is something that affects all of us, right? The experience that we get from carriers, be it either us being in the market to purchase a new policy, or we have a policy and something unfortunate happens, and we are reaching out, um, to for a claim, uh, how the carrier responds plays such a huge part in retaining the customer for future, right? And overall, in doing so, obviously, in increasing the lifetime value of each consumer. And again, so huge opportunity in terms of, by the way, providing great customer experience as well as providing a differentiated customer experience. So where Gen AI can play a role. One, I think, if you look back, let's say a decade ago, what customer service looked like, a lot of the agents usually went through training and they were probably given some, pre-built or predetermined responses to common questions that they should be expecting. And then that's what agent training was. And the approach worked because for a large extent, insurers have to make sure that they're operating in a bias-free manner and they're following regulations, all of that stuff. So that approach made a lot of sense. And where AI helps is that while keeping all of those constraints in mind and in place and following them, but bring in hyper personalization because there are so many other factors that play into a way how a particular policy can be constructed or particular claim is processed. And to be honest, like the best claims experience in my opinion is one, if I were to be talking about myself, is one that is fully automated where I don't have to negotiate with anybody. The whole process is done for me or done in the least frictionful way. And these are some of the things where, because like with not just Gen AI, but overall, machine learning is so powerful to determine when a claim that comes in, uh, using clustering methods, is it something that is standard and it meeting all the requirements? So in a lot of ways, from carriers' perspective, they determine that this is a very valid concern. So let's pay this out and make it as frictionless as possible. Again, the reason why to do that is that you're hoping now this customer becomes a loyal, lifelong customer for you. Or in cases where something doesn't seem right, right? I mean, there is some discrepancy or anomaly in the claim. Identify that so the claims agents can then take action based on specifically what information it is that doesn't seem to be adding up. Or I think, let's say I call in and say, here's a policy I was looking for, knowing what life stage I am in, what region I am in, what my needs are. The offering that could be made to me could be very, very tailored and personalized to me. And these are some of the examples of, the kind of the information that could AI could process in real time and provide recommendations to customer service agents. So, in turn, they provide a delightful customer experience.
Thanks for sharing. How about if we talk about the underwriting use case? I think that's something that at ITC Asia this year, which kind of happened 2 weeks ago, people were really interested in that topic as well. So just wanted to hear a little bit about what Socotra has done in that area.
Again, huge opportunities there. One area that we have been discussing, and it's not something that we have productized or shipped yet, but we are very much in exploration phase in terms of how we help improve the underwriting process. Many different scenarios, but one that clearly stands out to me is where use cases where we could be leveraging intelligent document processing and
Mm,
um, purely because we all understand underwriting by its very nature is very information and document heavy. And those sets of documents tend to be, um, one, very disparate forms and disparate templates, and they tend to be both structured and unstructured. Uh, so from a human perspective, we start to hit our limits of processing all of this
yeah.
information rather quickly when we compare us, especially when we compare ourselves to what machines could be doing. So I honestly think that is a huge area of, where we can tap into how we make the overall underwriting process both efficient as well as, more accurate because, it just feels that here an underwriter is in charge of making these key decisions based on these vast amount of documents, whether that is, previous history, like, history of previous claims, previous policies, previous payment history, and then make a determination of both, the terms that they are going to set forth or whether to, basically approve the submission itself or not. So I think overall, like, helping them uh, read, I don't know, the 100-page document while summarizing the key points that are the most relevant for that decision,
Yeah.
I think probably provides the most promise and advantage.
Thank you. And I think now many insurers are still in early exploration mode, right? I think the technology is exciting, but the implementation path isn't always clear. And not every team is ready for deep integrations or sweeping change right away. So, from your perspective, what are some of the low-hanging fruit use cases that insurers should be focusing on as early wins in their Gen AI journey?
Yeah, I think that in general, I mean, this is something that I think is something for insurers and carriers to keep in mind, but I think this is something that applies to policy administration systems such as Socotra, is if we can start with more internal facing and low regulatory risk use cases first, I think the advantage that comes from that is that it builds the familiarity, it builds the trust, and also it helps us assess the ROI, right? I mean, how much are we paying for these? Because we don't talk about some of the cost of ownership of acquiring some of these new technologies and actually running it within our hosting it and running it within our environments. So I think there's a lot of learning to do. So yeah, overall, I think whether carriers or other insurtech companies, what are those use cases that are more internal facing? I think that would be one. I think, like I said, I mean, I already spoke about the document summarization, document extraction. I think that seems like an area very useful. I think, something that we can immediately not just build out the use case, but also measure the impact of, what are the kind of efficiency gains that we are seeing? How often are these the summarization extraction tools correct versus not? I think that's one area. For sure, again, going back to customer service, I think there's a lot of automation that can be done over there where, um, this whole concept of chatbots, this is
Yeah.
a decade old, but um, the pre-Gen AI chatbots, um, very limited, right? And very
Yeah.
difficult to design them right. They often ran into these failure cases. And once, a customer hit a failure case and the chatbot was not being useful, they often just picked up the phone and made a call, which kind of completely beat the purpose. So I think that with Gen AI, that the amount of usefulness of this chatbot has definitely increased. And I will add that I think, especially now with the introduction of this notion of agents, I think that's further improving the overall usefulness of the chatbots, right? Because now not only are they having a conversation and giving automated responses, they're also getting things done automatically. So I think that evolution, I think, is very exciting. Something, and again, um, because especially if you build in the off ramps to failure cases, right? I mean, in case of failure, you can always call and reach out either or message the customer service team, and a human can be brought into the conversation. So I think the risk of the technology not always getting it 100% in those scenarios, I think is can be mitigated. Obviously, we need to be careful about what those use cases are that the servicing chatbots are being used for. The other couple of pieces I would also add is, in general, there's a lot of information, and this happens with any company, but particularly in amongst carriers, is that there's a lot of data and a lot of internal knowledge that is stored and maintaining within different departments. Again, I think that is an area where just the information sharing and the knowledge sharing can be very useful, right? Because, for example, an underwriter making a decision about a new policy might want to have access to the claims history for that owned by that particular customer or by that business. And then there is this problem of data silos. So could we make that information data sharing much more easier? I think that's another area to look into.
Yeah, I also feel the frustration is usually doubled from a customer point of view when like a chatbot isn't working as well as they thought it would be. So it's interesting that you mentioned that as well. Of course, one of the biggest barriers to innovation is obviously kind of like legacy infrastructure. But platforms like Socotra are changing the game by making it easier to just plug into tech like Gen AI. So how is Socotra's approaching the integration of Gen AI with legacy and modular architectures? What's technically difficult and what's now possible that wasn't before?
So I feel that at Socotra we just started out with that competitive advantage because we always designed our platform to be an open platform. All of the functionality that we provide as part of our platform, this is one of our core product tenets, is that it is expressed via an API and it's and all of our platform capabilities are publicly documented, and that documentation is kept up to date on a weekly basis when we make changes to our platform. Not just that, it's also modular, and it's always been, right? So with those fundamentals in place, I feel that just gives us tremendous competitive advantage to bring in these AI capabilities within our platform, either us building it on our own or us choosing to build a service that is available out there. And it's not just an advantage to us; we pass that advantage to our customers, right? So we can tell our customers, you can pick and choose what you want to light up within your ecosystem. And speaking of the ecosystem, I think that this is something that we are very aware of. A policy admin system is one part of the ecosystem that a carrier has. And quite often, um, the other aspects that, help the carriers run the day to day, could be and usually are these legacy mainframe systems that are probably not designed to be as easy to integrate with. And that's the challenge that I think holistically our customers face, and that's something that we work with them to solve for them. And the biggest one that arises because of these different types of systems that make up that entire ecosystem is essentially the data aggregation, right? So how the data is maintained or how it is accessible across all the different systems, that it's a non-trivial challenge. And also, I think that works as a great reminder for us at Socotra is that, it's not just about being API first. It's not just about being modular. We have to make data accessibility a first-class citizen, always. And, that is something we, given our understanding of what our customers need and what they struggle with, that's something we take very seriously at Socotra.
And I think with all this potential, there's also a lot of concern, especially in regulated markets. Bias, explainability, the data governance are major factors that can't be ignored. What are some of the biggest challenges around governance, bias, and explainability when deploying GenAI in insurance? And how should carriers, insurers be addressing these without slowing down innovation?
Right. Yeah, great question, right? I mean, lots of opportunities and big challenges.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think the balancing between innovation and compliance is always kind of, that what's that step forward, right?
right. Let's, start with bias, the big one, right? And uh, when we look at all of these models, right? I mean, whether the Gen AI model or the more traditional ML models, they're all built using a set of data, right? And this data, in some cases may be synthetic, but in most cases is based on real data. For a carrier, for instance, they'll probably look at their past policy data to train a model. And we know that in the past, these decisions were made by humans, and humans, as humans, we are all fundamentally biased. Um, so I think, and a model is only as good as the data that it's trained on. So if there's some underlying bias in the data itself, then it's, you know, inevitable that the model that is trained using that data is also going to carry that bias. And it's a very gnarly, scary topic. And I mean, many out in the industry are, grappling and trying to figure out, um, how to deal with this issue. And that is where, but and not to say, it's scary and we cannot tackle it, but there's ways to mitigations that we can put in place, like you said, so we don't just shun the technology as a whole, but we make progress. A couple of things is I think there is we can use just process here, right? There is frameworks like fairness audits that can be done on a regular basis to look at what decision or recommendation the model is making and validate it with a human in the loop and see, if there's a match or if there's a certain pattern that's emerging, right? Same thing, conducting adversarial testing to see, when challenged, does the model stick with the decision or does it change the recommendation? If so, why? Um, and I think that this is another challenge that also happens is that, I mean, this is the case when we know what data that it's getting trained on. And oftentimes especially when we start with, and for many use cases, we often do with a foundational model. For most part, we don't know what data it was even trained on for us to even look for what kind of biases that model could be carrying. So I think that, to tackle something like that, either we can do representative fine tuning, where sure, use a foundational model, but then fine tune the model using data from your enterprise, your organization. So that, a lot more control over the type of decisions and recommendations that this model would then generate in future. And also, this is where explainability enters the picture, right? Because often, and I think, again, there's a lot of organizations and companies focused on this problem. But when a recommendation is made, bring along with it why that recommendation is being made based on what data. Show that, explain that, and insist on, basically introducing explainability right from get-go. So this doesn't become a reactive thing later on. I think that these are some of the mitigations I think we have at hand to put in place. So we don't completely become distrustful or fearful of these technologies.
Thank you. And I think let's close by looking ahead. We're hearing more about embedded insurance, parametric models, and even real-time underwriting. GenAI could really amplify these shifts. So, what role do you think GenAI will play in shaping entirely new insurance models in the next few years? And I invite you to have bold predictions as well. I think that's something that the listeners would be excited about.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it exciting that, I mean, it feels like, you know, when it comes to insurance, we wouldn't be thinking about, oh, innovative products. But truly, when we look at how the models are changing quickly, right? And again, I think a big part of why this shift is able to happen now is us having the capability to process, in real time, a lot of the data available to us, right? So, I think across all of these new, I would say like, mo insurance models, whether it is, embedded or parametric, the real time, I think all of them are defined by this notion of, something's happening. The consumer is in the process of interacting with an insurance product or, making a purchase and using information that the system has obtained real time, either about the consumer or about the circumstances. And let's say I'm talking about uh, I'm making a flight purchase for next week, and the system knows that the weather forecast for the place that I'm flying to, it says in a week's time there's going to be a hurricane. It can now basically provide that information and provide that context to me is and basically say, hey, this is highly in the past, like, I mean, I just had a choice, like, do I buy insurance or not? Like, and I would
Mm.
pretty much always say no, right? I mean, but in this case, provide that additional context to basically say, hey, but the place that you're going to, there's a high likelihood that because of weather reasons that this flight could get canceled. Would you still like? And I think in doing so and providing that personal experience, you know, might convince me that, hey, this time I usually say no, but this time it might be worth purchasing, which is both a benefit to me as a consumer as well as from for an insurance carrier. It improves conversion rates, right? And that's one example. It could be a number of other data about me, about where I'm going, which region I am, what my purpose of the trip. And again, this is travel, but it can apply to me renting a car, right? Me applying for an apartment rental. There's so much information that can be processed while I'm still in that purchase process to then make a recommendation, right? Or when we talk about parametric insurance, again, I think such an so much like room for innovation over there. But one, both determining um, when a trigger has occurred, again, like listening into real-time data to one make a determination of when a certain trigger has occurred in order to make that payout, or in some cases, using all of this information to make recommendations to either underwriters or actuaries of how they should be pricing these products, right? Again, tremendously useful, which we know historically would are very laborious, very manual, not as accurate as a or real time as the insurance companies would like to be. So a lot of possibilities over there. I think my the one word comes to me when I think about um, just insurance products available to all of us is I think it would everything would become hyper personalized.
I love that
Uh,
word. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that when and in doing so and not just using it as a buzzword word, in doing so where us, like all of us as consumers, we feel that are the products that are being either offered to us or that are being recommended to us truly understands who we are and meeting where our needs are. And from a carrier side, obviously help them achieve their goals of, in terms of making the right, pricing decisions and what have you.
I think especially in the new generation of people as well, they grew up, having everything kind of like personalized. I'm not sure if you see like the trend about how people are personalizing their bags with like different bag charms, etc. I think people innately kind of like that the fact that like this belongs only to them. And I think it comes with insurance as well. If they know that certain products are being curated based on their spending habits or based on their regular kind of like day-to-day like activities. I think that's like something that people, especially consumers, will be really appreciative of. And I think that kind of like flows down to how insurers will also be able to better sell their products. So I think that's really interesting. Thanks, Sunny. Thanks for the insightful conversations. And thanks so much for joining us and sharing your perspective. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this series, be sure to look out at the insights page on the ITC Asia website and also check out Socotra's latest work on Gen AI and insurance modernization. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the future of insurance.